Okay. I thought something was going on. I couldn't hear myself, but you said the mic's on, so I was like, okay, it's on.
Test.
So could they not hear what I said out there in TV land? Okay, well let me just start again. Welcome to our Girl Talk. We are so pleased to have you here with us today to have this conversation to celebrate Women's History Month. And we have a very diverse panel of individuals here, ladies who I know and love and have had an opportunity to work with, and I know
Hallelujah.
some of their story. But what I want them to share is with you their stories because it is a story of encouragement. It is a story of resilience. It is a story of how they've overcome obstacles, as well as how they have been advocates for their family and our community, and how they have done revolutionary things, non-traditional things. And if you wasn't paying attention, I just spelled roar, R-O-A-R, because women, we are women. Hear us roar. We will not be ignored anymore. So anybody's trying to silence us, shut it down because it's not happening. And so tonight, what we're going to do is have this conversation with Dr. Freddie Grooms, a retired university administrator who worked for, count them, 5 different presidents. And so I know she has some stories. We're going to spill the tea tonight. We also have my good friend, a local attorney, Gazelle Rodriguez. This is my sister for life also. We bonded on many, many things. And whew, after this election, we were probably crying together. Let me just say. So she's going to share her story. And then over to my far left in the back is my good friend, my sister, Michaela Denny. Oh, we have some stories to tell. We work together in a local nonprofit trying to help victims of sex trafficking. And so there's a story to be told there as well. And then my community daughter, I just adopted her because she does it all. She just got off a plane, but she's here. And this is Talithia Edwards. Talithia is the CEO, because you're the CEO or the COO of the Edwards household, or whichever role. But she and Bishop Edwards, they run a how many kid organization? 8 kid organization right out of their house. So it's a nonprofit. But we want to hear these stories. So as I said, I'm Commissioner Diane Williams Cox, and this idea came to me to celebrate women's history. But we all know that women's history is bigger than 1 month, right? Women's history is every day. And for those who are women, girls, and those who support us, we thank you. And we're going to go ahead and get this story going. If you're in the local area, please come by. We're here on site at Elevate Church Tallahassee at 1160 Capitol Circle Southeast. We have some great refreshments here. You can come by. But if you're watching us online, no refreshments for you. You're going to have to get your own refreshments. But we have food catered by Don Shea Gilmore, galas by Gilmore, and it's fantastic. So stop by. Let's start with you, Dr. Grooms. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and telling us your story?
Thank you. Good evening. And I want to thank you, Commissioner Cox, for this opportunity. For me, this is a signal honor. Having been born some X number of years ago to Negro parents, living in a colored community, and growing up to be a proud African-American woman, life for me ain't been no crystal stairs. Hello. I was named Freddie for my father, Fred, and I guess they might have thought it might have helped me in this man-dominated world, but it didn't. But I lived a pleasant childhood filled with love and support and appreciation. And it went well for a while, and then I went to high school, and I had a rude awakening. I was a good student, so I thought I could have extracurricular activities. I was going to go out for the majorettes. And there were 2 girls who were graduating, and they were going to fill those positions. And so I was number 6 of the group competing. And everybody went up, and the coach was actually a person who was going to make the decision. And so the 5 earlier girls, they went up and they performed. But interesting enough, when I reached when it reached my term, he got up, picked his books up, and went to his office. So I asked the teacher, I said, well, what is wrong? Why is he leaving? She said, go ask him. So I did. I followed him to his office, and I went in and I asked, I said, you didn't stay to see my performance. How are you going to evaluate me? He looked up and said, you are too dark to be a majorette. I was hurt. I left. I went home. I told my mom. She waited till my dad came home, and she told him. Well, by now it's too late to go to the school. So he waited and delayed going to work the next morning to go and confront the coach. And he did. And so when he approached him, he said, sir, I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. And he went on to say, but I can't let her march and lead the corps girls, the drum corps girls who walked behind the band. So my father just left and went to see the principal. There, the principal was apologetic and he was shocked. So he said, well, the coach will never again select majorettes. And I'm appointing a 3-member committee to do that for the future. And so he explained to my dad how he regretted. And so as it finally ended up, I did march in front of the girl corps behind the band. And I was well received because the word had gotten out. So people at the parade were cheering me on. So I felt pretty good about how things were going. But I want you to know it might have given rise to my dedication to equality and fairness and justice, because that I thought was unfair and discriminatory. But nevertheless, I have had many opportunities to share and to stand up and speak up. And I've had some interesting opportunities. But interestingly enough, I have never applied for a position. My appointments or hires came because of being prepared, having mentors, graduating from Florida A&M, networking, referrals, or just being in the right place at the right time. When I graduated from Florida A&M with a degree in home economics, I had planned to go to Okinawa to join my husband, who was a military officer at the time. And my girlfriends were all taking the national teacher exam. So I had nothing else to do, so I took the exam. In the meantime, my husband contacted me and said, I'm getting out of the man's army, so you can stay there. And I thought, oh boy. But at any rate, Mrs. Moore, who was a supervisor over in Gaston County, heard about me, and she contacted me and asked me to come for an interview. And I went to Havana for an interview with this opening up this school. It was brand new. And so she said she was impressed that I had passed the exam and that made a difference and blah, blah, blah. So I thanked her, and she offered me the position as teaching home economics in the high school. And so I said, fine. She said, but there's one stipulation. I said, and that is, she said, you have to live in Havana. I said, oh, no, I can't do that. I have a child in school in Tallahassee. I just can't do that. So she made an exception. She said, we'll try and see how that works out. So I stayed there at Northside High School for 3 years teaching home economics. And I got excited because I noticed that boys needed some of the same kind of experiences. So I started the first all-boys home economics class at Northside High School. And there was lots of fun there. But anyway, after about 3 months there, 3 years there, Dean Walker, who was the dean of College of Agriculture at FAMU, contacted me, and he said that the U.S. Department of Agriculture was getting ready to hire minorities, and they wanted to hire a loan officer. And I said, loan officer? He says, oh, yeah, you can do that. And so they interviewed me and offered me the position, and I did accept, and it was a good experience. But as a loan officer, I would have to listen to people and read their resumes and decide whether they would get money. And because I was the first black loan officer in that county, there were people who came and took a peek and said, if I have to go in that black woman, I don't want a loan. so, such was the case. I examined a map that was on the wall, and it had pink pins in it. And I said, well, what is that? Nobody would ever tell me. But I learned that in Monticello, they would loan African Americans money beyond what they could afford, and ultimately they would take their property. And that was discriminatory. When I realized that, I contacted the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington and advised them, and they did an investigation and took corrective action. So I felt pretty good about that. But then they learned about what I had done in the community. And one evening when I was going home from Monticello to Tallahassee, I went to a caution sign on the road, and I slowed up. In fact, I stopped. But then when I cleared it, a policeman came up behind me, and I rolled my window down, and he said, Freddie, called me by my first name, never asked me who I was, and said, we don't need any uppity blank blank in Monticello. Well, I went home and told my husband. He said, that's dangerous. You can't go back there. So I didn't go back to work there, but I did continue to pursue action because of the unfair treatment. And then later, as a result of that, Dr. Clonita Ford, who was Dean of Home Economics at Florida A&M, heard about my incident. So she said, Freddie, come work for me. She wanted me to be a counselor, and I had already started taking a master's degree in counseling. So I said, okay, I'll try and do that. And I did, and that went on for a while. I was very happy, and she was satisfied, and we got lots of young women and men into college through that program, and it's still going on. I'm proud of it. But nevertheless, after a while, I went to a conference, and they were talking about writing proposals. So I decided to write a proposal, and I was writing it to get kids into college, but the gentleman told me, he said, we're trying to get people in institutional research. I knew very little about that, but I did some research, and I wrote a proposal that funded a consortium of 10 schools, and subsequently the President Perry said he didn't want all that money coming to Florida A&M. Let them send the money to each individual school, and it would be managed better that way. So we said fine, and I did that for several years. And I was over at Florida State University working on my PhD, and I was a member of a minority committee that was looking to increase the representation of minorities in the College of Education. And so the dean observed us a while, and he said, Freddie, you have made a real difference. And I said, well, thank you. At the same time, President Marshall of Florida State University had said he was going to appoint someone to central administration to help them increase their representation of ethnic minorities and women. So Dean Ford, I said to President Marshall, I know just the person for that job. And subsequently, Dr. Marshall wanted to get in touch with me, but I was working at Florida A&M at the time. So at that time, you could not recruit from Florida A&M without permission from the president. So President Marshall contacted President Perry, and they ultimately agreed that he could talk to me about it. And I did go and have the interview with the president, and he offered me the job. Then I was interviewed by a vice president, and then another vice president, another vice. So I said, I don't want the job. You know, they're too much looking at me, and so they finally explained that they really wanted everybody to get to know me better, the working relationship and all of that. So I did accept the position, and I became the first female and the first African American to hold a position of executive assistant to the president for that responsibility. And that really was a place where I found my seat, stood up, and expressed myself, and I truly think I made a difference. I developed an affirmative action program for Florida State, and it was approved by the federal government. It happened to be the first one for the state university system approved, and ultimately it was used as a model in the state university system. And we were real excited. And we didn't want to just look at hiring people. We wanted to also change the culture a little bit and have people appreciate the value of everyone. And so we had programs designed to do that. We appointed one person in each department to serve as a liaison to my office. I couldn't be everywhere and see everything, but I had an army of folk who would do that, and that made a really big difference. And we learned to recruit differently because they said they couldn't find people, but they weren't looking very far to find people. So we taught them how to do expanded searches and have groups to identify areas where they could find people. And we got pretty good at increasing the representation. We found that it sort of was a value added to the university with minorities and women in significant places making policy and decisions and making a difference. The university grew, expanded, and I think became a better institution. Nevertheless, we had some challenges. There were struggles. There were people who didn't understand, but we didn't give up. We worked continuously and expanded our efforts. And I believe we were successful, and I was there for several years, and I did work for 5 different presidents. And the policy was when the new president came in, central administrators submitted their resignations. But no one ever accepted my resignation. They allowed me to continue. So people used to say I was a survivor, but I think I was a thriver. Thank you. And then so somebody was asking me, said, Freddie, did you really make a big difference? I said, well, we had our first vice president for student affairs who was a black man. That was Bob Leach. Then we had Beverly Spencer, who became the vice president for development. Tara Met, the black registrar. Daisy Floor, the first woman dean. And then Carol Shackelford, personnel director. Jack Gant, dean of the College of Education. And my most special person, I thought, was Dr. Mel Stiff, and many of you know him.
Yes.
I say that because we almost didn't get Mel. It happened that he was one of the finalists. And when some of the faculty members in the College of Business realized that, they went to President Sliger and said, I have nothing against Dr. Stiff, but if he became dean, we would never be able to raise money in the college. And that's just, we shouldn't do that. So President Sliger and I had an agreement that the next administrative position would be filled by an ethnic minority of women. So he held fast to that. In the meantime, Stiff heard about it. He was in Boston, so he called me. He said, Doc, I don't want it. I'm out. I said, oh, no, you can't do that to me. And so eventually I persuaded him to stay in the competition, and he did. And he received the position as dean. And I have you know that Mel Stiff, as dean of the College of Business, raised more money, brought more money into that college than any dean ahead of him. And they are still doing it. The Morans, the friends of his, are responsible for them to have a Moran Institute now. All of that because of the contact with Melvin. So I just believe that affirmative action could be positive, but it was attacked. There were lots of oppositions, including federal agencies fought it. And ultimately, you know the status of affirmative action. It's not where it used to be. But interesting enough, moving forward, however, then there became another group, another concept, DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion. And of course, they expanded the affected class to the LGBTQ. And so now there's a lot of opposition to this. And in fact, the U.S. president did an executive order which says that you cannot have diversity programs on campus. People have been fired, circumstances are in an uproar, and it's just almost devastating. But anyway, some are trying to salvage efforts by changing titles and classifications, but who knows how effective it'll be. So I simply say, people, these are critical and challenging times that require us to stand up, speak up, and take action that will help these programs survive. The absence of such is unimaginable. So I think we must unite with determination and unwavering belief that each of us has the power to make a difference. And so I say, are you ready?
Yes, we are.
Well, like Michelle Obama says, let's get to work.
Let's get
That's
to work.
right.
Let's get to work. Let's do something. Woo, I think you got to come out of retirement. Because apparently you took the playbook with you. We need that playbook dusted off, and we need you to go back across the way, and let's make it happen. In fact, why don't we just go ahead and get you an appointment with the governor? So you can let him know that we can't turn back. We can't go back. We will not go back. As women, we will not go back. So, Dr. Grooms, thank you. That's just so inspiring. From the very beginning, many times women don't hit their stride until they're adults, but she hit her stride early in life, and thank God for your parents to go and intercede on your behalf. And parents, it's very important that when your children come home and tell you things that are happening at school, go check it out. Because had that not happened, who knows what would have happened to you. You may have lost your confidence. You may have found your way to get into trouble because you're going to be rebellious. But because your parents supported you, that was very, very important. Let's give Dr. Grooms another round of applause. And her daughter is here with us today. Not only is Dr. Grooms a doctor, she produced a doctor. And she is her legacy. And she has moved back here from Arizona. So you all are not afraid of moving around the country to do what needs to be done. So thank you, Dr. Linda Grooms Walden, for being here with your mom. Yes. So Gazelle, girl, what's been going on? Let's talk about it. Let me tell you. And her husband, David, is here with her. He's always with her. Thank you, David, for being supportive. And how old is your baby now? She's a beautiful little...
She is 17.
17?
She's
Oh,
about
my
to go to
God.
college. So, yes, we are
I've
at
watched
that
her
stage.
grow
Yes.
from the little girl.
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
my,
yes.
17.
So now we are in that, stage of just, getting ready for college and doing all of that. So we are very, very, very happy and excited. And we're blessed, actually.
Well,
So
I know she's your only child.
she's my only child.
And Dr. Davis, who we're being hosted here at Elevate Church Tallahassee, where Pastor T is what she's called, but her name is Dr. Towanda Davis. She has one child, and her child is 13 hours away at Purdue University, majoring in mechanical engineering. So
That
if your daughter is
phenomenal.
planning to go somewhere far, far away, you might need to have some counseling sessions.
I know, right?
With Dr. Davis, because
That's right.
we've been to Purdue, we've been to the West Lafayette a few times.
Yeah.
And in the first year, we went a lot of times. So
Oh, I cannot imagine.
yeah, but so tell us what's going on in your world.
So let me just start by saying this is just such an amazing event, an amazing opportunity. I am so thankful that, for the invitation. But right now, the truth of the matter is that I am trying to digest everything that, if you don't mind me calling you Miss Freddie. Freddie. For this event, I started looking at quotes, right? And it's so amazing because the quote that I wanted to use to start this conversation, it's you. I mean, it's not your quote, but it reflects everything. It reflects you. So it's to me, it's like, it's amazing. So the quote, and of course you're gonna know this lady because she was an amazing person too. Her name is Shirley Chisholm, and she said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And you have brought the chair many, many, many times. And it is such an honor for me to be sitting next to you. And a blessing as well. And I'm going to tell you why. And I'm going to get into what I thought was, my speech or my conversation. But I think this is important because this journey, the journey to pursue justice, this journey of fighting for the well-being of others, it's very difficult. And sometimes it gets to be very lonely, and not too many people understand it. And the way you expressed your journey, everything you said about your journey, it gives me chills because you are validating my life. And I say that because every day I wake up and I ask God, how can I make this world better? What can I do to make this world a better place? Because to me, that's the essence of being in this planet, of being alive. And not only is our essence, but it's also our obligation as Christians, So everything you said validates my own journey, and I'm so thankful. And one of the things that I'm going to take with me when this conversation is over is when I feel low, down, defeated, when I feel like there's no purpose, there's no reason to fight, I'm going to think about your journey, and I'm going to get the strength to continue. So thank you so much for sharing your life, and I'm going to be forever thankful to God that He gave me the opportunity to be here. There's always a reason for everything. This invitation came out of the blue, but I know there's a purpose, and I'm thankful for you. So, starting with that quote, and then with this wonderful lady that I'm just privileged to be sitting next to, what I really wanted to say, when I was in school, the subject that I hated the most was history. I couldn't stand it. And the reason why was because it didn't make sense to me. Like my question was always, okay, well, you were not there. So am I supposed to believe all of this? Because, we were talking about history from generations ago. But it was me. It was just more like always questioning things. Now, as an adult, of course, I see the importance of it. I understand it. I value it. And I absolutely know that if you do not know history, you are bound to repeat it. And we are sort of seeing that now, right? So what I want to do, I just printed out a bunch of things. And this is going to make sense, hopefully, because this is sort of like my passion, if you will. But what I did is I said to myself, okay, let me just go back and see where we were, right? As when I say we, I'm talking about we as women, right? Just to get a taste of what our journey has been, right? So, and the reason I did this, I'm just going to be brief about this. This is a real life experience. This happened when we had our meeting, our organizational phone call. Remember I told you that there was a friend visiting and all of that. So we had a conversation. We were having dinner, and she used to live in Washington, D.C. and we were having this conversation about her time in Washington, D.C., and all of that. And she made a comment. She said to me, you know, every time I think, now she lives in Jacksonville, so she moved from Washington, D.C., a few years ago. And she made this comment. She said to me, you know, when I look at the years that I lived in Washington, D.C., I feel like, I resent it. I resent the time, the years that I lived there. And I was like, why? It was so wonderful. I mean, I remember we went to the Women's March back in 2017 together in Washington, D.C. So I was like, why are you saying that? And then she went on explaining why she was saying that she was resentful, right? And she said to me, it's because during the time that I lived in Washington, D.C., I was so against men. I was so, like every time I thought about men, I was always thinking about how unfair everything has been for us as women. So, and I'm beginning to understand, and she was saying, I'm beginning to understand why this hate sort of came about and all of that. And she said that now she's looking at things in a different way, right? She doesn't have that resentment as far towards men anymore. And I told her, I said, that is wonderful, because this is not about resenting men or hating men or any of that. It's not about that, right? But I also said to her, I said, it's wonderful that you're going through that journey and understanding that this is not about that. But I don't want you, while you're going through that, understanding, I don't want you to forget our history either. Because, yes, this is not about hating anybody. This is not about resenting anybody. But we cannot forget. So that's why, in preparation for this talk, I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to go back in history, even though I don't like history, or I used to not like history. And I'm just going to read just few things that I highlighted, and then I'll get into, because I know we have, a limited amount of time, but I'm going to get into why I did this. So I'm just going to read the things that I highlighted, right? And that's why I said to my friend, it's wonderful because this is not about hating anybody, but you cannot forget. So one of the things I highlighted, this is the title of this is Complete Timeline History of Women's Rights, right? So the first one that I highlighted was, and again, this is like a list, a long list, but the first one was in 1777. All states passed laws taking away women's right to vote. In 1890, Wyoming becomes the first state to grant women the right to vote in its state's elections. There's a theme, there's a point, reading all of this. In 1969, Shirley Chisholm, of New York becomes the first African American woman in Congress. Her motto is "on bought and on bust." She served in the United States House of Representatives for 14 years. In 1971, in Phillips versus Martin Marietta Corporation, the U.S. Supreme Court outlaws the practice of private employers refusing to hire women with preschool children. In 1974, housing discrimination on the basis of sex and credit discrimination against women are outlawed by Congress. In 1974, Cleveland Board of Education versus, and I can't pronounce this name, Lafleur, determines it is illegal. See, this is just, it blows my mind. Determines it is illegal to force pregnant women to take maternity leave on the assumption they are incapable of working in their physical condition. Please bear with me, because I need to read all of this. In 1974, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act passes. It does away with the practice of banks requiring single, widowed, or divorced women to bring a man along to co-sign any credit application. In 1975, in Taylor versus Louisiana, the court denied states the right to exclude women from juries. I'm almost done. In 1978, the Pregnancy Discrimination Act bans discrimination against women on the basis of pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical issues. Anyway, I think I'm going to stop reading this. But the point of this is, this is, again, not about hating, but it's about understanding that we have been in very tough places. Our situation as women has been really, really difficult. And when I read, and again, I read the whole thing, it's more than that. It's way more than that. But the ones I highlighted, to me, it's like, it's amazing that we are where we are. Right. It's amazing that we have overcome so much. So much, because when you read all that, it's like, okay, we almost didn't exist. Yeah. I mean, we almost did not exist, right? So we had to sort of break through so many barriers, so many limitations imposed on us because we can think. We have the ability to think. We have the ability to make decisions. We understand life. And for society to decide, I don't know when, that we couldn't do that, it's not only wrong, but it's so offensive.
Oh, yeah. Right, right.
And now, 2025, it seems like we're going back to all of that.
We ain't going back.
We are not. We are not.
Somebody trying to take us, though.
But the fight, it's real. The fight is real. This is real. Because things are happening, and this is my second point, and I'm almost done. And this is why I wanted to talk about this, because I understand how critical, how important, how absolutely necessary is to talk about voting, right? So it matters tremendously.
Absolutely.
I think we have a lot to do there. I mean, we have a lot of work to do.
Yes.
But right now, as we speak, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you have more information about this, I have, on purpose, I have not followed this because it makes me so angry, and I have to sort of protect my being. But there's a point where you just can't, turn away, turn your back and say, well, I don't care. No, because no, you got to fight. So I don't know if you're aware about this, but I'm sure you are, but there's this act. I think they're voting on this. I think it's next week. Diane, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the SAFE Act. All right? And this act, I think they're voting, the U.S. House of Representatives is voting on this next week, I think. Supposedly it's to, protect the integrity of voting. But when you really look into it, the effect of this is going to be devastating. Because, of course, when you read it, it sounds absolutely wonderful. But when you really analyze the effect on this, it's gonna, especially women, it's gonna affect them tremendously. Because if you are going to register to vote, or you're gonna upgrade your registration for whatever reason, you move, whatever, now you're going to be required. Of course, the bill is going to require you to show that you're a citizen, right? Something that, the law explicitly says that only U.S. citizens can vote. So, but that's another subject, another topic. But by requiring this, I was reading that one of the things that you can, if you don't have a passport, which is, that's another topic, because not too many people can get this document, and, there's so many hurdles that they're putting into this. But the one that relates to women is the one that you're going to have to match your name from your birth certificate and another, valid form of ID. But most women, when they marry, they change names. So it won't match, right? So they're not going to be able to prove anything, right? Because that's just the law if it passes. You know how many millions of women are going to be affected by this? Millions. I mean, some of them are going to go through the process, right? Some of them are going to, of course, I'll change, I'll do whatever. But that's not the reality for most people, right? That's not the reality for most people. So what are we going to do about this? See? What are we going to do? Because we need to continue the fight, right? We must. And I'm getting this from you, Miss Freddie. I'm getting the medicine from you. We need to continue the fight, but maybe what we need to do is do more of this, more of these conversations, more of you know what? Okay, you want to change the law? Here we come. You're not going to stop us. We are going to, yes, whatever, we're going to overcome it. So we must. So I'm going to leave you with this because I can go on and on and on. But I want to thank you for this opportunity. This has been an amazing time, the time of my life. Let me put it to you this way. And I thank you once again because you have given me the medicine that I was looking for. So thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation.
The mic is yours. Thank you, Gazelle. You know, it's divine intervention. It's divine intervention. Because we have to learn from one another, and we have to strengthen one another. You know, I heard a speech this week that told us that we needed to toughen up, and that we need to understand the fight, and that we need to navigate it carefully. But the E was we need to encourage one another. And that's what this is about. This girl talk is not to talk anybody down, but to talk us up. And to highlight and make people understand we are in a fight for our very existence. And if we go quietly, we will be erased. And I don't know about you. I don't plan on being quiet. I've never been quiet in my life. And this ain't the time to start being quiet. So thank you, Gazelle. And thank you for just, I knew you were going to come from the legal aspect because, you know, that's your field. That's what you do. And you're very effective at it. And I know that you're doing a lot of work in trying to help our community navigate these critical times. And so thank you for what you do. Yeah, let's give her another round of applause. We are halfway through, and this has just been phenomenal. Quarter 1 and quarter 2, it's just been phenomenal. If you are just tuning in, let me tell you, this is what we need more of. girl talk. We need to talk more about what we're going through, who we are, where we've come from, and how we're going to go forward. We have in our audience some young people, some young ladies. We even have a young girl in our audience. We want to make sure she understands that we're here fighting for her future, and that we're going to do all that we can to make sure she doesn't have to do these fights again. Some of these fights have already been fought, and we shouldn't have to keep fighting these fights. But if that's what you want to do, we're just going to roll up our sleeves, and we're going to keep on fighting. Put your dukes up. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. I remember growing up, we were bullied in my neighborhood by the kids from across the street. It was a large family, and, they bullied us. One day my grandmother told us, if you don't fight them, you're going to have to fight me. So we started fighting. And we've been fighting ever since. So that's what we got to do. That's what we got to do. We're going to fight with words. We're going to fight with policies. We're going to fight with our vote. And they know that. That's why they're trying to do some things to affect that. But that's okay. God is still in charge. Amen. We're going to move to our top panel discussion here. We're going to start with my community daughter, Miss Talithia Edwards, fresh off a plane. Where'd you just get in from?
Nashville.
Listen, as I said, she is either the CEO or the COO of the Edwards household. She and Bishop Edwards, they navigate a nonprofit that includes 8 children.
8 children.
2 in college, 1 on the way. How many in high school? How many others in high school?
I'm about to have 1 that graduates. I got a junior, a freshman, a 6th grader who's turning 12 tomorrow, a 5th grader, and a 4-year-old.
And a 4-year-old.
Jesus. Yes.
Sister, tell us how you do it. Let's do some girl talk on how you navigate all of that.
Yeah, so I was wondering, I was like, how do I tell this wonderful story that's interwoven in my life? And so I'm going to share with you all a poem, and I'm going to make it brief, but I think that this resonates as you think about, many of you all know the community work that I do, but I've been asked recently a lot of questions about family, work-life balance, and, the matriculation to this place of where I am now. And it's this poem called Won't You Celebrate With Me by Lucille Clifton. And she says, won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a life, a kind of life I had no model. Born in Babylon, both non-white and woman, what did I see to be except myself? I made it up. Here on this bridge between starshine and clay, my one hand holding tight, my other hand, come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. And so this is a poem that I really, it really resonates with me. It's where I think I am and how I think I've gotten to where I am. I grew up in Miami, the oldest of 3 children in a single-parent household, first-generation college student, brought here to go and attend FAMU with no model, with no idea of what it meant to make something of yourself in this academy, right? Let alone once I married my husband and how to be a wife, because I had come from lots of, broken marriages and trying to figure that out. How do I do this thing in partnership? And then you add all these other humans, right? It's a lot of elements. A lot of elements to the life. And so I had no model, and I had to look for models outside of myself. And I attended many parenting classes and read lots of books and have great examples, some of you who are here in the room today. But I am currently serving as the executive director of Good News Outreach, which is a local nonprofit. I'm an infiltrator of the planning field because my background is in organizing and advocating. I started in my own community. You heard that I had no model, right? Bought a home in a neighborhood that turns out to have been 33 plus decades disinvested. And through the work of trying to understand, how do I make this place better for me and my children who we're planning to live here and raise them here, but how do I activate my own voice for the people living in my community so that it all becomes better, right? And all of that trajectory has brought me to this place. And I infiltrated the planning field, and most people ask, like, are you going to go work for government? No, probably talk too much to work for government in a real life, but understanding that my role as a translator, as a coalition builder, is super important, right? And none of the roles or the hats that you heard me talk about as a wife or a mother of 8 children is separate from the work I do even in my own nonprofit. And so I am the CEO of my own community development organization that I do help organizations understand how to work with marginalized groups, very unapologetic about my work in marginalized communities, because I do believe while people may have good intentions, they don't take a lot of time to figure out what we need in our communities, right? Which is socially and culturally much different from the traditional communities that we see. So my work is specifically to those that look like me, right? And those who have been left out of the conversation. As you shared the quote from Shirley Chisholm, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring your folding chair, right? We've learned to bring our folding chair, our own table, the Kool-Aid, the drink, the chicken, the fry, right? And that's the kind of work that I show up and do every day alongside many people, right? We're talking here individually from our own standpoint, but nothing that we do is without others who come alongside of us. And so I am really grateful to have done this work in coalition and continue to do this work in coalition. But this work that started ground level from Talithia Hudson at the time, coming to Tallahassee as a first-generation college student, having no model, to marrying my husband and giving him every baby he wanted. I should have thought a little bit about that. But I gave him every baby he wanted, plus additionals, trying to figure that out. And I want to be real for a second, right, because it sounds very linear and very, progressional, but we tend to stop to talk about the paradigm shifts that happens along the way, right? I grew up very matriarchal, where the women run and led everything. I married a very patriarchal man who, paid all the bills and say, stay home and raise my kids. And I don't say that in a way of a dominance or control, but in a way that I took it as an honor to be at home and to raise my children and to set a foundation that will then, as you see, if you follow me on Facebook, that they're following that model, right? They are walking that thing out. And so that was a blessing of investment, but it was also a space that as a woman, transitionally, I had to deal with. I was an academic. I was headed to law school. I had my own hopes and my own dreams. And what happened as a mother, which developed into community leader by being concerned about what was happening on my street when my kids couldn't walk to school without certain things happening, has now transitioned into a work that every day I wake up with and go to sleep with, right? And so God is providential in that way, and that if we trust him in spaces in our lives, that we know that nothing that happens is without a good cause. And so even as I sit here today and I look at Dr. Grooms, who has done all the work that she has done over the time, and Commissioner Cox, and me feeling like I'm on the tail end of, when you think of that continuum of Black women, that what else is there to do, right? Like, I think about that a lot, that how does all the pieces of my story equate to who's behind me and what they're going to see, and then how do I continue to move forward but not forget to look back, right? And so that's an important piece as we think about our stories and our journeys, and never feeling that we've arrived to a place that is never without anybody that help you get there, and that is somebody coming up behind you. So I'll stop right there.
Fantastic. Wow, you were on your way to law school too?
I was.
It's not too late. It's never too late. Right, Giselle? It's never too late.
Never too late. No.
Yeah. And if I'm sitting here looking at her, and all of her children look like she and her husband, but Joshua looks so much like her that it's just sitting here looking at grown-up Josh talking with glasses on.
He grew his hair out so he can look less like me.
He looks so much like you, and her children are they're very, very smart. So staying home with them and teaching them at home has really really paying off. And we're concerned about folks not teaching our history. Well, we just have to pull up sometime and teach it ourselves. As I said recently, our Jewish brothers and sisters, they don't count on anybody else to teach their children their history. They teach it. So that way it's right. So plug out, shout out to teaching our own history, whatever it is, teaching our own history. And last but not least, my girl Michaela. Michaela, we go back a ways. We have cried on each other's shoulders. We have commiserated. The work that we were doing together was not easy work. It was hard work. Because when you see children being trafficked, it's heartbreaking. And our job was to try to get the help to those who were providing the direct services. We didn't actually provide the direct services, but we had to do the training for those who were providing direct services. And of course, Michaela also worked in the behavioral science arena. I'll let her share that with you if she liked. So she worked over at TMH Behavioral Center at some point in time. And I'll admit that she provided me with a little therapy too, because sometimes you need a little therapy. And I'm not ashamed to talk about it, because you got to talk about it, you got to get it out, so you don't go do something, the wrong something. So, Michaela, thank you for being such a positive in my life, and I so enjoyed working with you. And now I get to enjoy working with her in the community. And so it's on you, baby girl. Make it happen.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. And it's such an honor to be here with you all and to hear your stories and to know about them kind of from afar as well. And then to have the opportunity to come and sit by you and be part of this discussion is amazing. I also have to give a special shout out to Diane. Diane has been an incredible role model and, real mover and shaker in our community. And I went to pieces when she was going to end up leaving, because she was actually running for the commission then. And, Diane always makes people feel included and part of this really important work. So we appreciate you so much. And as the other day we were at the commission meeting, and there was a proclamation for Women's History Month. And, I was really thrilled and honored to be one of the people that got to go up there. And as the commissioner had so eloquently said, and which I often think of, is, well-behaved women rarely make history. And that really is the case. I mean, that has been something that has really followed me in my time. And, I come from the Northwest part of the United States, and I came out to Florida initially to study in the Department of Political Science here at Florida State University. And I came out and I was really bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and excited, and came out and learned very quickly that I was really in over my head, frankly. And I think part of that was, I came from being kind of a big fish in a small pond to coming out to Florida State University, which was a lot different. And also just because I was kind of a first generation college student, lost my mom when I was very young, had experienced some different kinds of forms of violence in the home, had, experienced, a number of traumas that many of us have experienced in our lifetimes, and kind of carried that with me, and came here really thinking that things would be very, very different very quickly when I came here. And so, my time in Tallahassee has really been occupied by a lot of opportunities in terms of education and being able to, I ended up getting a master's degree in political science, and then I ended up switching my majors and going to geography, and spent time being there, and then I ended up finishing with a master's degree in social work, so doing clinical social work as well. But most of my career has really been dedicated to doing nonprofit work. So I always was very driven by social justice issues, whether I had experienced that myself or whether or not I saw someone else that was experiencing that. It just really appealed to my heart, and so most of my career has all been dedicated to nonprofit work. And the way that I actually was able to meet the commissioner was indeed about 7 or 8 years ago. I was looking for a job. I had just been serving. I spent about 7 years at the statewide coalition of rape crisis centers. So I'd been doing sexual assault advocacy issues, or I'd been doing that work for most of my career. Had this opportunity to go to this new organization, which was then called Voices for Florida. And it was a brand new organization that had a kind of an idea and a will to make something happen. And what that was is the idea was that individuals who were being commercially sexually exploited, so individuals between the ages of 10 to 24, who were experiencing sex trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation were in need of services, and we were seeing this all around Florida. Some of you may or may not know this, but Florida is ranked number 3 in the country for the number of individuals who are actually sexually exploited, commercially sexually exploited in the United States. It's one of the most profitable crimes, surpassing drugs and other kind of like illegal weapons trades in the world. And it's something that's happening right here in our community. It's happening right in our own homes. And it's not necessarily, a lot of times when we talk about trafficking issues, we think of movement. We think of individuals going from one place to another. Oh, sorry if I'm doing that. But it's actually happening in our own homes with our own people here. So I got involved in that work, and I was really, really passionate about it. And one of the things that I was really passionate about during that time, and what I've really learned a lot in my career, is really being able to walk alongside and build people up and letting them be the experts in their own lives. And so we spent a lot of time trying to advocate for individuals to have voice in their experience and the services that they would receive. And so we started that program. It was really just a page. It was like maybe a 2 or 3 page document. There was a policy window essentially where there was an opportunity to expand that program. We got in front of some legislators. We said, we really would like to launch this program that has this particular model. They said, yes, we want that. And before we knew it, we were in business. We got like a $500,000 grant very, very quickly. And in fact, what's interesting about that, and we can talk about this as well, is sort of talking about supporting other women who are doing work, especially when you're new into a work, is really, really important. And sometimes opportunities just befall on you and you're able to take it, but being able to kind of support other women in that process is really important, and also kind of seeing where other people have come from and being able to support that. So anyways, we got this grant. We had to essentially team together. Diane was there from the very beginning in that, and had to really try to create this new model to provide services across the state when we had very little experience. We had done some basic research, but I can tell you, and it's with great pride, that within the 5 years that we had served those individuals, we had served over 1,300 survivors of commercial sexual exploitation and sex trafficking in Florida. One of the things that we found out, during that time, is in terms of their needs, they were all kinds of like therapeutic needs, there were housing needs, things like that. I got really, really involved with a lot of individuals who were survivors and felt really passionate about Lee. And so I decided that, I have some gifts. I'm really a helper, I'm a builder. But one of the things that I said was, well, it sounds like what I'm hearing from everyone is that they need housing. Housing is really, really critical. So I went about it on my own, and I wrote my own grant, a federal grant, and we were granted that fund. And so we were able to serve about 25 people, thank you, about 25 people, to provide them housing for a 3-year period of time. So that was a pretty incredible experience. But since, my career has ebbed and flowed, there are a lot of different things that I'm interested in and that I've been engaged in. But the thing that has been consistent in all of the work that I've done is the women that I have been able to work with and have been inspired by, and have been able to inspire as well. I think it's really a mutual give and take. And I think that we're really in a very critical time in our country, in our city, in our own homes, in which we really need to be advocating for one another, that we need to be making space for one another, and also, giving each other, encouragement, as well as really, again, focusing on people as being the experts in their own lives and empowering them to do that. So those are kind of some of the things that I've been doing in my career. I've really, I feel like I've persevered through a lot of things, the violence in my home. Like I said, I lost my mom when I was pretty young. I'm also an adoptive mother of a child that is now 11 years old. I couldn't be more proud to be his mom. But I'm not done yet, and that's the thing that I'm really excited about. I've been able to get involved in some service and some different organizations that I think are really important. I get the opportunity to come to this table and have these experiences, and And I just have to say, it is such an honor to be able to sit here and listen to these stories and think that I'm here and have a place at this table, and I will happily take it. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank all of you ladies. You all are just fabulous, just fabulous. And we're live on Facebook, and so I put it out there that if anyone has questions that they want to ask these ladies, then we'll take those questions. And we have people in our audience. If you have questions, we would like for you to let us have your questions as well. As you can see, as I said, I promised it was going to be a very diverse background. So we come from all walks of life. We got everything up here except a truck driver, and I believe we could drive a truck if we.
I got a 15-passenger van.
Okay, close. So we do it all. We do whatever is needed. And like you said, Giselle, we've overcome a lot. We have overcome a lot. And like you said, Dr. Grooms, you've shown us how we've done it. And it's because we have to be in those rooms where decisions are being made. We have to do, and I always felt this burden that I had to do the right things, and I had to be successful. I had to act right. I had to be right so that others behind me would get that opportunity. Because I remember working in a state agency where a generalization had been made about people of color because the person before me didn't do right. And so because of that, they were very skeptical about hiring people of color. And so I felt my responsibility was to go in there and prove that wrong so that others could be hired, not by myself, but with a lot of help. And then being in the room where decisions are being made, you can help make that happen. And so I remember, and I tell this story all the time, and he'll tell you that it's true. When I first came to the city commission, and I looked at the org chart of managers, and I met with the city manager, who I did not have a relationship with yet. But today, we have a very good working relationship. I pushed the chart across my desk to him, and I said, there are not enough black faces on this chart. What are we going to do about it? He said, we'll fix it. And he did. Through these years, we have included not just black faces, but women, other people of color, because I told him, we cannot move our city forward without the workforce looking like our city. And some of the things that I said also is that when we put out videos and publications and what have you, we need to be able to see ourselves in there. Asian Americans, Indian Americans, Puerto Ricans, black, white, we all need to be able to, young, old, gay, straight, we need to be able to see ourselves in our city because it takes all of us to make this city work. So are there any questions from folks in the audience that you'd like to ask these? I mean, here's your opportunity to get some free FREE 99 information from these superstars. Aren't they superstars? Yes, Dr. Charles, why don't you come forward? Come forward so that the folks can see you out in Facebook land. This is Dr. Ateria Charles, daughter of none other than Rita Carter, the well-known educator here in our city.
Hi, everybody. I thought I was going to happy hour, not a panel, so I'm dressed for Friday, so don't mind me. But hi, everybody. I just wanted to say something to my soror, Dr. Freddie Grooms. As you were talking, I was just thinking, I said, she was a chief diversity officer before that language was used. And having gone through my career and been a chief diversity officer at a Fortune 500 company, and all of us right now being in total turmoil, figuring out the world, I just want to say thank you for doing the work you did when it didn't have the titles that it has now, when it didn't have the money attached to it that it has now, when it didn't have the prestige and the top 50 in magazines and all that type of stuff. You were doing it thanklessly, and I just wanted to say on behalf of that community, of those of us that picked up the torch, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions or comments in the audience? Well, let me ask my own questions then. And any of you can answer this. What advice would you give to our young people, especially our college students who are getting ready to leave college and enter this workforce? What kind of advice would you give them, knowing where we came from and seeing what's happening in the world right now? Once upon a time we were telling them, go forth and do well. Go seek your fortune. Don't forget home. And in my all-time favorite, take Jesus with you. But What advice would you give to young people coming out of college now?
I want to tackle that one. I want to, and this is what I tell my daughter, and I have been telling her this, I think ever since she was born. I always say to her, look at people for who they are, not what they give you, not what they look like, not what they think they're gonna do. Just genuinely take the time to know people, to know their hearts, to know what they are really about, and then go with that. Because when you look at people for who they are, right, then you can go places with them and with others. And if you do that, then you can actually have an impact in the world. So that's what I have been telling my daughter all this year. So hopefully she'll listen.
Anyone else?
I got to spend this week with a group of college students, and it's interesting because one of the young ladies asked me that question this week, and I was like, whoa, what would I say? And what I said to her was, and it sounds so cliche, but know yourself. Like, know who you are. Know the gifts that God has given you, what you're good at and what you're not good at, right? Like, I have learned to articulate. Y'all call me on this cell phone, you better send a text message because I'm probably going to miss the call, right? Like, I've learned to say the things, right? Because this doesn't make me deficient. I'm good at what I'm good at, and I can show up and be who I am in that, and I'm going to be excellent in that particular space. But also, in knowing yourself, you don't just stay deficient. You either surround yourself with people who are good at those things that you are not good at, or you work on being better. Like this year, my husband theme this year in the house, like the year of excellence. And I'm going to be honest, I was like, I got this, right? That's what I was saying. I was just being a little, in the house, mama managing all of them. But I had to really think, what am I not? Where are the places where I can be excellent, right? If I'm going to be true in evaluating myself. And it's always places that we can improve. And when we do that, when we go inside of ourselves, knowing ourselves, we're able to then work on things that will make us better. And being transparent about that. I've been told, you overshare. I overshare because no one told me certain things I needed to know. Like, so I had to figure it out. I had no model. And so I don't want another young woman or person that even get to be in the sphere with me to not have a model. Let me tell you the mistakes I've made or the things I've succeeded and how I succeeded so that you then don't have to waste the time that I did in order to get there. And I think that's super important in this space. Graduating college, if you get that, you don't get to 30 or 35 still trying to figure it out.
That's great. Dr. Grooms?
Yes, I would simply say that, in this life, there will be mountains and valleys. It's not going to always be good, but you have to be steadfast. And again, it's been said, you need to have confidence and believe in yourself and be careful not to listen to things that are negative that will impact you, but try to take a positive concept and move forward. And always remember, there is tomorrow.
That's right. Get a good night's rest and start again. Start again. Let me ask this question. Having not gotten another question. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you felt inferior? And what did you do about it? I heard someone call it imposter syndrome. Whatever name they were putting on it. What did you do about it?
I can't say that I felt inferior, but when I left Florida A&M University and went to Florida State University, there is a perception that they're stronger, they're better, everybody's smart and all that. And I got there and realized it's just like the other places. It's not that different. They're not that smarter. And I was as smart as they were, and I felt as confident as they did. So it wasn't that I felt inferior, but I found out, I'm all right.
That's right. That's right. Anybody else? Are y'all confident women?
Yeah.
I love it.
I would share definitely many places of feeling not feeling confident. Specifically, when I used to stay at home, I stayed at home 15 years and raised my children, and I would hear people say she's just a mama. She's just a mama. And I could sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, you hear things long enough. I don't care how confident you are. You hear things long enough. And I remember as I began to set myself up professionally, I would hear that. She's just a mama. You're just a mama. And when I think about it, I'll use this moment to just talk a little bit about myself. Like, I came from Florida A&M as a first-time college student, right? First-generation college student. Got my master's from Florida State. I've participated and worked with Harvard on several projects. I'm heading to Yale this summer. I'm getting ready to do my second TED Talk. So the things that we think or the things that people say, right, to us, if we enumerate on that and let that soak in, we tend to stay in that place. But if we are able to, that stuff still stay in your head, or you still hear it. But if you tell yourself, nah, I'm heading somewhere, it's something else for me to do. I'm watching women ahead of me. I can't imagine. Like when I look at Dr. Grooms, I couldn't imagine all of those things, right? Even having been close enough to Dr. Ford, when she said to me, I always just called her Dr. Ford all the time. I never knew that her doctorate was in home economics. And so think about me in this generation born in 1982. Home economics was not what we were aspiring to. You understand? Mm-hmm. And so to think about those, when I would ride in the car with her and the things, I was like, oh, what you mean, sewing a button? You know, I would ask her these things. And to see what from a home economics degree to understanding some of my other mentors who did that, Dr. Leela Walker, if you know her, she did the teaching test, right, to go be a teacher. These were positions assigned to us. And at this moment, we can do whatever we want to do. And so I think about those moments, even in places that I felt inferior. And I too experienced that, Dr. Cruz, when I went to Florida State. Now, I'm not going to lie. When I went to Florida State, I was like, they freer than we are, ever. That's how I felt. I journaled about it for 3 months because I had experienced the freedom watching, the students on that campus that I had never felt. And I went to school in my 30s. You know, I had never felt that kind of freedom. And what it did is allow me to practice that freedom on my children. Let me give them some of that freedom and take away some of the restraints of what you said, feeling like you got to look a certain way, do a certain thing because you're trying to make space, right? Mm-hmm. But that we are already good enough. And so I don't want to go too long on that, but I think it is so many levels to that feeling of not feeling inferior, but recognizing, as Dr. Groom say, child, it's like every place else. And we're all the same. We're all trying to figure it out and get to a place. So
that's right. That's right. Anybody else?
I was just going to say real quick, I have never felt inferior, but I can say that I've been fearful. Fearful. So fear, it's been sort of like a frenemy. It's been part of my life for a long, long time. But I can happily say that January 12th, 2024, when my dad passed away, he was the light of my light, and I thought I would always have him near me. I never thought that he was going to pass away. Was just this thing that I had in my brain. But when he passed away, he gave me the greatest gift of all because he took all those fears away. So I'm not fearful anymore, and I'm thankful for that.
I would agree, inferior is probably not the right word, but definitely an imposter. Absolutely. Every day. Probably today. I mean, honestly, I have that feeling oftentimes that I struggle with. And then I have to kind of take stock a little bit, like what everyone's talking about here, and go like, wow, I really have accomplished something, and I have a lot more places to go. I really do. I have a lot more growth to do, but I'm here. I made it this far. I mean, I'm going to be 47 this year. I'm feeling like I'm, making it pretty well. And, when I'm able to do that, but I do feel like that a lot of times. I think that's, something that's often, it's imposed upon us to feel that way. So, and of course, when I look at the other people in the room, I don't think of that. I don't think, oh, you're not imposters. You're right out here, doing the work. But yeah, I definitely, I have that feeling, and I really try to push against it a lot, because I know that it's not really helping. So I have to think about things, is this helping me to get any better at this? And if it's not, then I need to push it away.
Yeah, very good, very good.
Add something quick.
Add to it.
Not only are you here, but you're also needed. So know that.
Yes. And that's how we encourage one another. People see me now, and I am a very confident person. I really am. And I'm a very outgoing person. I'm not an introvert. My friends are introverts, right, Dr. Davis? But until she's preaching. When she's preaching, she's not an introvert. She's in another zone. But when I think back over my life, I think about being a teenage mother. When I found myself pregnant as a teenager, as a young teenager, I did feel inferior, because I saw some of the ladies down the street who I had looked up to kind of looked down their noses at me and muttering things, and you could see and hear, but God, here I stand today. All of that fed into and led into this. I'm not that I was perfect, but God is perfect, and He takes those crooked paths and He makes them straight. And so that son that I was pregnant with, my oldest son, will be 48 this year, so he's going to be older than you, Michaela. And to hear my mother was 18 and my dad was 17 when I was born, and to hear my mother on a prayer call Monday morning say to testify that I was not a mistake. There are those who may have said to her that I was, but for her to validate me in such a way, to tell me, to say publicly that you were not a mistake. Now, I never thought I was. I never heard this conversation, but it just gives me chills right now to hear my mama say at 80 years of age, to say to me, you were not a mistake. There were those who said you were, but you were not a mistake. And so that's the greatest gift that we can give to one another, to validate that we are real, we are people, we're purposeful. And so I really appreciate it. That gift was better than any gift she could ever give me, to tell me that, because I never thought I was, but I'm glad she agrees. We're touching and agreeing, Mama, and she may be watching. My mom lives in Hartford, Connecticut. I talked to her earlier today. So if you're listening, Mama, thank you. I love you always. She knows that I'm a daddy's girl, but Dad is in heaven, and I used to look like Daddy till he left, and now I'm looking like Mama. I see her every time I look in the mirror. I'm becoming her. So thank you, Mama. So I'm going to ask this question, because it was asked of me earlier this week on a panel that I was on. What is the message that you would give to your younger self? I want each one of you to think about that and just share a little bit about what would you say to your younger self. I always like watching CBS Morning News when they bring people on and ask them to write, what would you say to your younger self? And so this week I had the opportunity to say that what I would say to my younger self is that you're going to make mistakes. You're going to trip. You're going to fall. Get up. Keep going. You're going to be all right. You're going to mean something. You're going to be somebody. And that's one of the prayers I prayed when I found myself pregnant as a teenager. Lord, help me and my baby to become somebody. And the Lord has answered that. And so those are the kinds of things that I would say to my younger self. Don't be afraid. Keep going. Keep your head up and keep going. So what would you say? I did that talking so y'all could think about it. What would you say to your younger self in any order you want to go in?
I don't have to think much about it, because I think about that every day. And what I would say to myself, I would say, believe in yourself more. Don't be afraid. And be compassionate. Just have some compassion. That's what I would say to myself.
I'm inclined to say to my younger self that you are indeed a blessing. and that you are a person with ability. Use it and try to make a difference and leave this world better than you found it.
And you've done all of that. You've done all of that. I don't know if you said it to your younger self when you were younger, but you've done all of that. We are here to validate that. We got receipts.
I probably would say the first thing that comes to my mind often is that you're worthy. You're worthy of the good things that happen to you in your life. And, you know, you're worthy of not feeling like you're an imposter. You know?
She didn't give you enough time, did she, Talithia? Uh-huh. You're trying to cheat, uh-huh.
What would I say to my younger self? I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable because, to be honest with y'all, I grew up, my grandma told me a lot of good stuff, and I always said those things to myself a lot, believe it or not. And I've done a lot of the things that I wanted to do. I was just strategic like that because I grew up around all the older people, so I never really was like a kid. But when I was 21 years old, I had what we call in the black community a nervous breakdown. So I was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic, and I can remember the talks that people would say to me, you're going to always be here, right? Like you always have these things, right? The voices and the delusions. And just think of it as like taking a heart medication. I remember that. And for a minute, I was going to resign to that get a Social Security check and take the psychotropic medication. And if y'all know me, I move all the time. I'm like, I'm go, 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 go. It is no way I could have resigned to taking psychotropic medication for the rest of my life and operate at the rate that I like to operate. And so I would say to myself at that time, just like I said to the college, trust yourself, trust God. Because I remember, and I'm being very transparent, because it's not until I begin to have my own episode that you hear the whispers, oh, mama dealt with that, auntie, right? You begin to hear all these things and you recognize that this is generational, it's hereditary. And so I remember praying a prayer, not understanding fully all of what I was experiencing, but God, this stops with me. And that type of willpower, I would say, Talithia, young self, trust that same willpower, that same stubbornness in everything you do. I refused to believe that was the space I would resign to. And I didn't know it at the time. But again, y'all see me, I'm here today looking at y'all. But I think that's what I would say to myself. Like, don't resign to the things that people are going to say. Trust yourself. Allow the trust you have in God and your own ability to, and note that you're going to get past this. Because, again, I'll add this. If you know anybody who suffered with mental illness, it was literally the worst experience ever. And at times I didn't think that I would be past that space. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank God we have older people in our lives, because, you know, I was raised around older people as well. My mom's mom named me Diane when I was 4 months in my mother's womb. And we connected that way forever until she went to heaven. So she told me a lot of good things. She couldn't read or write, but she was the smartest woman I know. And she could calculate her money in her head faster than I could do it on a calculator. And she had a lot of sayings, a lot of isms and things that she would say. And I remember one time she said to me, you got to have mother wits. I said, what is that? She says, common sense. Okay, mother wits. So any questions from anyone in the room? Any insight, anything you want to share? I got some of my other community daughters here in the room with me as well. So y'all good? You got a question? Come on down. This is my community daughter, my Sarah, all the way from Broward County. She's here working in the Florida legislature. So you turn around so they can see you out there on TV land. Yeah.
My name is Andrea Knowles Hill, and everything else that she stated. But I just want to say that I did not know what to expect when I came here, And I think every question that popped up in my head, you all have answered, because the struggle can be so real. Working in government, in my role, I'm surrounded by a bunch of male dominance. And since things have changed politically, there seems to be a strength that they've developed and more courage and more meanness. And I was always a very just shy, quiet. I gave everyone else the benefit of the doubt and would not always tell myself the things that I've heard you share. I don't roll like that anymore. And I think they get a bit intimidated because I stopped being intimidated. I start being intimidating, but in a good way. Yeah, but I just want to say thank you to the four of you and to Mayor Pro Tem Diane. I know T, I'm facing the wrong way, but I wanted to speak to these four ladies to say thank you for speaking into my life. I would have not met you. I've seen Sora Freddie before, Dr. Grooms, McClendon, and I just want to say thank you, ladies. Thank you. You have just made such an impact in this hour that I've been here, and I say thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. We do have some people online watching. Mr. Harold Edwards II is watching with us now. That's Talithia's husband. He's a very supportive husband, and he's my son too. She's my daughter. He's my son, and my biological son. They remind me of each other because they're both big guys, you know. So to Jaleesa Coffee, she's saying that great panelists of women with lots of wisdom. I'm enjoying the inspiration of each one of them. So, and we also have folks who are still at work, but they're watching. And so thank you all so much for watching. We hope that you will share this. We're going to go ahead and if there are no other questions, we're going to go ahead and do a wrap up. We're going to ask each one of you to take a few minutes to do your closing statement. And in your closing statement, I want you to impart some advice on our women for going forward, if you can do that in any order you choose, not all at once.
I'll wrap it up. And sorry, I wasn't meaning to be heavy, but you didn't talk long enough for me to think of something.
Oh, you
else.
Listen. This is girl talk.
Yeah,
and that's how we girls do it. That's why we live longer.
that's right.
Because we get it out.
That's right.
You can't hold it in.
That's right. If I give any wrap up advice, the thing that I would say to women is that know your value and your worth. I think that's an important thing. We talk about that a lot in a male-female relationship way. I think that's even in business. When I started my own business, I had to know that I was being called a lot, and Atira actually says this a lot to me. I was being called a lot, and people were asking me to come and count up the hours, and like, that's free time, and I got 8 children. So value yourself, right? Talk to other people about the value that they have and the things that they're charging, because we're talking girl talk. And it's important because men are typically paid more than us, for us to talk about what we're being paid and what our salaries are, or what somebody paid another woman to come do a thing similar, so that you know how to then add value to the work you're doing. And we didn't talk a lot about that, but I think that that's an important piece to understanding, that your value is your value. Everybody can't. Some people shop at the dollar store and some people shop at Gucci, okay? So some people are not going to be able to, not everybody will be able to afford your value, but the people that you're called to and that value you will then honor that value.
I think my advice tonight would be, don't be the last one to follow all, because they're all amazing and great. I think, and I heard this in various iterations in this conversation tonight, is just being really compassionate, being compassionate to others, certainly emphasizing kindness, but really trying to give people the benefit of the doubt and give yourself the benefit of the doubt as well. So I would say that.
I would be inclined to say, just remember that you are enough. And there's much that you can do. So just go forth and see what's needed and contribute and make your contribution, because you are enough.
And I would just say to all women out there and to every woman here, I'm just going to channel Maya Angelou, and I'm going to say, you are phenomenal, 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 phenomenal women.
Thank you. Let's give our panelists a big round of applause. This is, you talk about your value. This is so valuable. This moment in time to celebrate women's history is invaluable, and it's very important that we do that in this moment, in this moment in time, and in this climate, as folks are busy rolling things back. They're scrubbing websites to take the word woman off. Like I said on Sunday here in this very pulpit, ain't your mama a woman? You want your mama to make less money than a man? You want your mama to work harder than other people and not be appreciated for it? So let's just remember, everybody had a mama. All of them may not have been good, but you had one. And, just remember that. And if you have children, then they have mamas. And so you want to make sure that we treat them right. And Talitha, you touched on something that had Dana Brooks been here, we would have talked about more. It may be a future subject. The cost of being a woman. It costs money to be a woman. It costs time and opportunity to be a woman. The time that you spend at home taking care of your children, where you could have been a corporate lawyer, what have you, there's a cost associated with that. And Dana has broken it down to the time that we're out on maternity leave, the time we're out sick because we're having that visitor every month. All of that costs. And when we make less than our male counterparts, there's a cost associated with that. And so we need to understand we're always making the sacrifices so that everybody else feels good. Well, it's time for us to take it back. We're going to because we ain't going back, so we're going to go forward, but we're going to take it back. So thank you, ladies. Thank you for being here. Thank you for this girl talk. It has been phenomenal. Phenomenal. And that's the word. And to those of you who joined us and those of you who will watch this in the future, we want to thank you for doing so. We want to thank the pastor of this church, Dr. Towanda Davis, my best friend, my chief of staff, and her church family, the Elevate Church Tallahassee. Please go to the website, Elevate Church Tallahassee. They have a number of services held here in this location, 1160 Capitol Circle, right across from Sam's. And I want to thank them for sponsoring not only the space and not only for doing the YouTube and the Facebook, but also for the refreshments that we have here tonight. Please take some refreshments with you. They were brought here for you, and we certainly do appreciate your support, Pastor T, and for your prayers and for always being my right hand. I really, really do appreciate all that you do to help me be great. I appreciate that, and that's what we do as women. Yeah. We help each other be great. So thank you all. You're great. I want you to go be greater, and I want you to be your greatest. Right. So we'll see you out there doing the doggone thing, because Michelle Obama said we got to do something. So let's go do it. Thank you, and God bless, and have a great